Our next conversation is going to be about police reforms. President William Ruto formed a task force and told them, please look at the welfare of the National Police Service. And not just the police, look at the others as well, the prisons of service officers as well. Look at them, look at their recruitment, look at their remuneration, look at their how they are facilitated to do their work, look at their well-being, how are they housed, how are they dressed, are their children going to school, are they happy at work, what do we need to do to make sure that the police... The person who has made the chair of this is Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga. The report is out, and that's what we want to discuss. We are joined by the Acting Executive Director of the International Commission of Jurists Kenya Chapter, ICJ Kenya, Demas Kiprono. Demas, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. That's a hot seat of the Situation Room.
Yes.
We shall be discussing this report in great detail. We want to hear the civil society perspective on this.
Yes.
I'm sure you've followed the work of this task force throughout its work, its tenure. I'm sure you've interrogated this report, and you have also been working in the justice sector, looking at the police service for many years, and even the prison officers. So you'll tell us whether you like it or not. But before you do that, CT has got a plan to give you a proverb.
I do have a plan, and I'm actually going to actualize that plan. Our proverbs for this week are from the Republic of Benin, as we like saying, but I was informed correctly that it's actually not Benin. It is...
It's Bini.
Benny.
Yes, see, people who know. Yes, that was a studious silence so that you guys could fill in the gaps.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was,
Sorry. Next time we'll, be on the ball.
Now, remember, one of the things that characterizes West Africa had many kingdoms. Lucrative, huge kingdoms that sprawled one to go from the other. This particular country was, until 1975, even now, known as Dahomey. Okay? But prior to that was a kingdom. Now, what was better known for, I was going to say notorious for, among the wars that they had captives. They contributed significantly to the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, I'll leave it there. Now the proverb: before you ask a man for clothes, look at the clothes he is wearing.
Before you ask a man for clothes, look at the clothes he's wearing.
Yes.
Demas, what's your interpretation of this one?
My interpretation is that you cannot give what you do not have.
You can't, eh?
Yeah.
He's actually not wrong, given that his name is a biblical one. It is spoken of the early apostles that they not only gave of what they have, but they also gave of themselves.
Right.
Yes.
It's our city. It's our.
It's our.
It's our.
Yes.
Okay. So the David Maraga task force is formed. It had how many members was it given?
Oh, it had many members from different constituencies, from the police, from IPOA, from National Police Service Commission, from civil society. So it had very many members, and really collected views from a wide array of Kenyans, police officers, and went to every county to collect views. Yes.
Broadly, what are the terms of reference?
The terms of reference was to look at reforms in police, the prisons, and NYS, and then to perhaps look at the reforms that need to be made. So it had to do with welfare and also operations, and what laws or policies that needed to be changed so that they would function better as the formations that they were. Yeah.
Why?
Remember that when the current president came in to power, there had been really a weaponization of police in terms of using them for political ends. We can only suspect that perhaps and other reasons that this was done was the loss of the two consultants for the Kenya Kwanza team who disappeared, basically. Remember, just before that, we had a lot of disappearances within the blamed on the police. We had the Rivayala bodies being found in gunny bags, and so on and so forth. And so part of the manifesto was that they would look into policing. And I guess that was why they went into that. There have been issues with prison reforms. The prison reforms that came with Mudi Awori were very transformational, but it sort of ended there. And so they also needed to look into how prison officers are treated, how they are paid, and how they operate. Yeah.
The report is out now.
The report is out. We got the executive summary. The final report is not out to the public, even to civil society, because it had certain, this is what we are told, it had certain details that may endanger national security. For example, the weapons that needed to be procured for policing. Remember, our police deal with complex issues from money laundering, terrorism. We hear every day, not really every day, but almost every month, of IED attacks in the border regions. And so they really work in perilous situations, and sometimes letting the public know of the tools that they have may endanger national security.
So then, broadly speaking, from the executive summary of this report, what is David Maraga telling us? Is he telling us that our security systems, our police service has been okay? Or is he telling us that there have been issues in our police service that need to be addressed as a matter of urgency?
To be honest, the Maraga report is very blunt. It is not very diplomatic in terms of telling us that there is a lack of visionary leadership in the National Police Service. The National Police Service is led by the Inspector General. The National Police Service Commission has a chairperson and commissioners. One of the first recommendations is that the commissioners have a negotiated exit, that they go home, because the current commissioners, according to the report, surrendered their mandate to the executive and to the National Police Service. Be that as it be, it also says that the police service itself lacks visionary leadership, has recommendations as to the appointment of the IG, tells us to go back to the initial state when we passed the new constitution. The first recommendation was that we needed to have an IG who is independent of the executive, who does his or her work without regard of the regime, but does work with regard to the constitutionalism and human rights, and actually also his officers. And so during that time, the National Police Service Act provided that the National Police Service Commission would advertise, shortlist, interview, and then forward a name to the president. The first reforms that happened in the policing side was the Security Laws Amendment Act, which took us back to the situation where the police inspector general was beholden to the president, because it repealed that part of the involvement with the National Police Service and returned the appointing authority to the president, purely without any interview, without any vet, not real vetting, because there is this vetting in Parliament, but it's usually a formality. Yes. Another thing.
So this one now, Maraga is telling Ruto to cede that authority back to the National Police Service Commission.
Yes.
Same Ruto who was deputy president in 2014.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And remember, during that Security Laws Amendment Act, and the guise of the act was, Kenya is being attacked by terrorists, we need to really take back security. But it was really to usurp the constitutional gains that had been gotten. There are theories of policing. One of the theories is intelligence-based policing. The other one is regime-based policing, and the other one is community-based policing. They usually say a combination of community and intelligence-based policing is the best. But what we see is regime policing, where the police are there to cater to the needs of the powerful and the regime, and deals very badly with anyone who threatens the regime. And if we go back to our history, every time the civil unrest or whatever, people are demanding something. So in the 90s, when the clamor for more democratization, and in the 2000s, you remember after the elections, the 2017 elections, or before the 2017 elections, the IBC protests, you saw how the Kenyans who were protesting were dealt with. And we also saw that last year, during the Maandamano. And so how do we now change policing from regime-based policing to really fidelity to the Constitution, to the sovereign people of Kenya?
Okay. Yeah. So essentially what we're looking at now is reform within the police service.
Yes.
Right? As has been alluded to before, we have seen police reforms take place in this country.
Yeah.
Well, all right. We have seen the establishment of reports. We have seen, or we've heard, that reforms have taken place. We had seen it named a service originally from a force, whether it was mentally or otherwise, to take away that feeling that it was force and that it was actually people who were there to take care of the citizenry. Essentially, what we're asking now is reforms 2.0, or in this case, maybe 4.0.
Yeah.
Okay? And say that, look, we have seen over time that things perhaps could have gotten worse. And that as a result of this is what is happening in the country. People do not feel safe. People would feel threatened. People don't see the police service as a safe space to go to, but feel under threat. What do you think the appetite is? Because it would be very sad to say all of this work has been done, because also the assumption is that there was research that took place, there were questions that were asked, and then this report came about, right? Then there is the hope that the suggestions that have been put into the report would then be taken up by authority and then established as law and then implemented.
Yes.
What do you really feel is the appetite for reform to get things working smoothly from end to end within the police service? Is there an appetite? Because if I come to you today and I ask you for help, I must have some kind of expectation, positive expectation that something will be done.
Yes.
So from those who've done the research and put the report together, do you feel that there is an appetite to actually institute or implement some of these reforms which clearly are much needed?
Well, because the reforms are far-reaching in some of the recommendations, we expect some resistance from within the system. If you've been following Kenyan politics, you'd realize that after the 2010 Constitution, almost every attempt at reforms or changes for example, in the judiciary, in the constitutional commissions, for example, the Auditor General was trying to take us back to the situation where we had an all-powerful executive. We are happy that this is an initiative that was started from the executive level. And so we think that there could be political will for this. But the question is, will we get that, will that translate into political will within the police service itself? Because it makes a very stark indictment on the police service leadership. Are they going to step back and allow the reforms to happen? It makes recommendations of fresh vetting. Right? You remember Kenya went through a police vetting process that began with the chairperson of the National Police Service Commission being delivered a head, like a severed head. And so that tells you the stakes. So we can't pretend that the stakes are not high. The stakes are high, and so it's up to us, really, Kenyans, as the customers of the police officers themselves, because whenever we have a dysfunctional leadership, dysfunctional National Police Service Commission, the people who end up suffering are actually the police officers.
Yes.
Because if your human resource is not dealt with properly, it means that it's those who can pay their way through are the ones who get promoted, who get transferred to lucrative areas, in terms of geographical areas and also in terms of being taken to traffic police, for example.
Demas, I think let's just call a spade what it is, right? All the time we have seen the executive, the government, those in leadership, coming up with, let's look at, police and see how we can improve their welfare. They look at it from how they can help that police officer just be better. We give them a second pair of shoes. We say instead of
new uniform,
some new uniform,
colors.
We change the color of the uniform. We say, okay, so you guys, instead of living in these Mabati shacks, what we're going to do now, we'll have a contract to build some couple of houses where you'll all share in those houses. We haven't really seen political goodwill in addressing this. The push to have police reforms was a civil society and citizens push that ended up in the constitution, that ended up in now this entire revetting of all police officers, of creation of the structure of the National Police Service, of an independent Inspector General of Police and such. But we saw an immediate clawback of this. Immediate. Where the civil society was involved in recruiting the first IG of police, David Kimayo, we saw what happened to him. He was, an entire state machinery was used to basically just reduce and ridicule the man.
And his deputies.
Publicly, and his deputies. So that when David Kimayo was removed from office, everybody was like, yeah, but that guy. Yet this is somebody who had gone through a proper vetting and recruitment process. He had been found to have been suitable to head this thing. He had credentials to be the IG of police in a time when everybody was looking at who's going to be the IG. But he was completely rubbished. And thereafter, the president took the power to be appointing the IGs of police and moving them. After you've served IG, I'll make you the CAS. After you've served as IG, I'll reward you. Just go home. We'll sort you out. We'll sort out your medical bills. Now you're IG, your engineer. I'll be calling you. So the person who's in charge of the police is the Minister for Interior. It's the president. There's no goodwill. This David Maraga report, you tell me how all this boldness shall actually be implemented. Tell me how.
And whether it complements the current political establishment or whether it provides the sort of pushback they feel they don't need. Because every time we've had a powerful police service or force, it meant we had an authoritarian and a new authoritarian government, and the police commissioner represented that power, the absolute nature of that power. So they were powerful. But now, with the evolution, with the new constitution, we seem to be at crossroads. There seems to be a conflict. There seems to be the need to claw back the powers that the police force had then. There seems to be the need to constantly use the police force, not service, to ensure that the will of the political establishment of the time is enshrined. And so the service that the police are mandated to provide suddenly goes out of the window because it's definitely not a priority.
Well, and so in the last month, where we have been, civil society has been brought into a few gatherings by Interior, by one development partner working for Interior, basically trying to fast track these reforms. I can admit that we have seen movement at that level. We have not seen any gestures from the Inspector General himself, being the leader of the National Police Service. We have not had anything from the National Police Service Commission. And so, yes, it's going to be a challenge, but I always want to live being optimistic. That
Why do you want to be optimistic?
I want to be optimistic because I don't want to live in doom and gloom.
But if the reality is doom and gloom, where do you expect to live other than in that so-called doom and gloom? I don't think there's doom and gloom, if you ask me. So I'll hold my thoughts.
Okay. Demas Kiprono is our guest this morning. He's the acting executive director at ICJ Kenya, that's the International Commission of Jurists. We are discussing the David Maraga task force on police reforms. They have released the report, and as we've just discussed a bit of the executive summary, he says, Demas, that it's blunt, it's not diplomatic. He says there is lack of visionary leadership at the helm of the National Police Service. The National Police Service commissioners who are presently in office need to go home. Find a way of just sending them home. Fanya hivi, si unaweza kuwa ambassador hapa, something like that. The boss of the National Police Service, of course, then ends up having to leave. But then there are other recommendations that they've made. We'll look at those as well and see which can actually be implemented, which ones would be beneficial to the police and to the citizens, which can be implemented immediately. What else does it recommend apart from those two, that the leadership of the National Police Service?
So apart from leadership, the report also speaks to corruption, and we know corruption is one of the big things in Kenya. It's everywhere, but especially in police, especially if you look at the TI indices on corruption, it usually puts police at number one in corruption, and it really admits that the service is very corrupt, that it interferes with business. For example, the Inspector General a few months ago admitted that some of the officers were trying to give him the returns. You know, the returns are the monies that are collected every day from bars and businesses operating in different areas. But the theory is that the money usually goes up. We don't know how high it goes, but that is the theory. So
But he was denying that it reaches his desk.
he said that he refused. He said
But surely you didn't expect him to accept that it does, did you?
Actually, yes. This money comes to me every day.
Whether it does or not,
these are his words, and he refused.
we do not have any choice but to believe him.
Also, let me understand this.
Yeah.
So that with the claims that were made, that certain amounts of money would come to him as terms of the returns, was the question then posed to him to confirm or deny whether this money actually came to his desk? Was that question posed?
No.
What happened?
The context of this was an anti-corruption gathering at the Kenya School of Government, and as part of basically a statement in support of the assertion that there's corruption in Kenya, he said that he has been offered. Yes, but this is something every Kenyan sees on the roads.
Yes,
we see it in the bars around where we live, where police come in the evenings and take something from the businesses.
So what does it recommend about corruption?
It recommends, first of all, the abolition of the traffic unit, and removal of traffic stops, and basically replacing them with mobile units. That would from time to time, if there's a security issue.
So what do they be called if they're not under traffic department? They're under what? Mobile department?
They will be under the various precincts where the road passes.
Do they recommend technology?
Technology is one of the big recommendations. Yes. And having been at the National Council of Administration of Justice meeting yesterday, this was discussed a lot in terms of how do we remove cash from policing.
Do you really think cash is the problem?
I think there are so many problems. It's layered. The first problem is for you to get into the police, you may have to pay something, which means that you went in as a businessman. For you to be promoted or taken to a certain area, you have to give something, or if you don't give something, you have to repay to whoever took you there.
And Demas,
Yeah.
you're not paying to air, you're paying to somebody is
Yes.
taking that money.
Yes.
So it's a system.
It's systemic. It is systemic.
Yeah.
In fact, this is something that we also in civil society struggle with. How do you change the minds? How do you change the mindset? How do you disincentivize a whole system from this? Because we know, because we work with police officers, we know that there are certainly good police officers who do their work, who sacrifice for the good of Kenyans. But we also know that it's difficult to work within a system that makes certain demands of you.
But is it the system? I mean, this matter that we're discussing becomes rather pointed because we're dealing with a specific unit called the police service. But remember, in this service, they're called disciplined, for part of the disciplined service of forces for a reason. Authority in this particular establishments work in the unquestioned fashion of authority, meaning when you're given an order, ordinarily you obey. It's how this thing works, and that's the reason why they are able to do what they do. Now, you tell me, in many of these cases, yes, we are told of the demand side of it where they demand, okay? But then there is the supply side where we offer, okay? We are trading. There's the inconvenience of the law taking effect. I am overspeeding. Clearly, I'm doing 200. I should be doing 80. I know. The inconvenience of going to court. So, we discuss a middle ground of how that inconvenience can be removed. Or an inconvenience is created. Now, I am talking about something that we see boldly outlined within the police service, but which we have taken. It is ours as Kenyans. We have owned it. It is a national pastime.
So you're saying it's not systemic? It's not a system that encourages corruption, like you've said, an inconvenience.
No.
Of the.
No. But you know, if it was a system.
Are you saying if it was possible for you to have instant justice, instant payment of fines for traffic infractions,
yes,
you would still bribe a cop?
Yes, you would. You'd a discount. You want 5,000, me, I've got 2. Instead of writing it down, why don't I give you the 2 because I've paid and I just go. I'm simply saying it's our mindset. We think like that as Kenyans. Now, this is something we have to address directly because it is so normalized that it isn't even an issue. So we kick a fuss because there's this moral contradiction we have because we are a Christian nation and we believe in God and we go to church and mosques and we are inherently good people. That conflict arises, so we speak out against corruption, but we participate in it. Our religious institutions and the process of electing our leaders is part and parcel of this. You should see what goes on. In these ecclesiastical bodies, you'd be, well, I wouldn't be amazed. You probably know. But I'm simply saying, even as we discuss these reports, this is sugarcoating, this is window dressing. Why don't we just have this very honest conversation about what we are as a people and how utterly nonsensically rotten we've become and how we have embraced corruption as part and parcel of our daily lives? Let's start there and then let's see how we move out of it.
So this report should basically be saying, let us put targets.
Yes.
To reduce by this much by this time.
Or
Because we're not going somewhere.
To collect
let's
this
legalize this thing. Okay? And we say policemen are allowed to negotiate so we won't call it bribes for offenses. But
For services.
for services rendered.
With digital tools, we can get to something similar to what you're saying, but if we get actuaries to look at our fine system and to make it so that it's not really punitive, it's something that any driver can afford, and then at what point, because I know in certain jurisdictions outside Kenya, you can find a situation where someone has up to 50 parking tickets. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we ask yourself, this is getting too expensive, right?
Can I assist you with a thought?
Yeah.
you talked about digitalizing the service.
Yeah.
All right, let's say first offense, you're over speeding, it is 2,000 shillings. You can ask friends to Changa, you'll pay the 2,000. And you pay it online. Automatically, the policeman who has written this thing down automatically gets 20% of that to his account immediately. So the more people you arrest and the more money the government gets, the higher your commission. It automatically makes it a business. So you will want to do your duty because you know you're going to get your bit anyway. Now, there'll be those rogue individuals, they always are, who will want to take everything. But I'm simply saying, this thing of trying to pretend that we have a situation that only needs a little tweaking here, removing this so that they can become ambassador to Pakistan, and that nothing changes. It's the same discussion.
You want us to legitimize extortion.
I want us to
So
put
because
a
a cop has
structure.
a target,
It's, yes.
he will come and find a mistake on you. Wewe, hii miwani yako ioni mbele. Fine.
Yes.
Ah.
I prefer that because then I'll say, take me to court.
There is a book by one scholar called Alice Hill, and it talks about African presidents and their police commissioners. And part of the theory that she puts forward is that because the police have been told your work is to protect the regime, as long as the regime is okay, then you can do all the collection that you want. And that is part of if you look at most African countries, you find that problem is there.
It's a give and take.
Yeah, it's a give and take. We've had moments in our history. I remember after the Kibaki regime came in, where Kenyans were the ones demanding that police officers behave well, they would make citizens arrests. You know, there was that moment.
We had hope then.
Yeah, that hope quickly disappeared.
It was extinguished.
Yeah, it was extinguished. And so I think there is a way that the powers that be, the police, can extinguish hopes. We had digital OBs set up in certain police stations as a pilot project. That digital OB system would have eradicated some of the things that we see in police stations, where on weekends 1,000 people are arrested and then 100 people end up going to court. What happened in between? You know, those are the things that would have helped. But you know what? Those things don't work anymore.
You know something?
Yeah.
They actually do work. If they didn't work as much as we sometimes say, the system would have collapsed. It actually works. You see, there is a way in which it is balanced, all right? And the balance is the problem because we then don't look at the right and wrong, we look at the excesses. When there's an excess, when we say, no, this shouldn't happen, okay? It's like, say for instance, the complaint that Uber drivers have, I travel by taxi every day. I was told I shouldn't say Uber because I'm advertising a certain app, cab service. They complain that county security officials are by far the most exorbitant in terms of their demands. They demand a lot of money from you. And they say, the traffic is fine. They'll take 100 bob, 200 bob. That's acceptable. Those fellows start with 5,000 going onwards. Now, we've accepted the 100 is okay. We've accepted the 200 is okay. We are protesting the 5,000.
We have been conditioned to accept the 100 is okay. We should reject even the 100.
I agree completely. You see, even this thing has agreed with me.
Demas,
Yes.
does the report recommend anything about the welfare of the individual officers working in the police and prison service?
Yes. Let me talk about, the report is about 500 pages. And so...
That's the executive summary?
No, the executive summary is smaller, but I'm just telling you that we concentrated on the police part for obvious reasons. For the police, there has been an issue of welfare. There has been an issue of mental health. The report speaks to the need of comprehensive health insurance in the police service to ensure that they and their families are taken care of in terms of health services, and earmarks mental health to be part of this insurance. Yeah. And so that
what we are saying is that currently police do not have a comprehensive medical cover.
Yes, the medical cover is very problematic. You may go and your registration is not acknowledged, or that the service is not available at that time. So yes, at the moment there is a problem in terms of health. In terms of mental health, the mental health is there have been attempts to have trainers of trainees in terms of mental health. They've domiciled it within the chaplaincy unit, and I usually say that mental health issues are not spiritual issues. Yeah, these are medical issues. We have all witnessed the murder suicides that have happened in the service, where an officer within the barracks kills another officer or a loved one and kills themselves. And so there is a mental health crisis that needs to be taken care of, and it still feeds back into human resource, because if you're being frustrated by your boss, and we know that the nature of policing is quite it's not like any other job. One moment you're called to pick up a body on the road, another moment you are dealing with a murder case. You have to internalize the case, then go to court and explain what you saw. It really needs a lot of debrief, a lot of mental, psychosocial care.
So does the report go deep into this, or does it just mention it like, we need to take care of the mental health of our police officers?
So because I haven't seen the 500 plus pages, I can't say whether it has gone deep enough. But usually, what I know about the discipline forces is that they and such reports that just doesn't really go deep into the issue. I've not seen that in any recommendation on the separation between the chaplaincy and the real health issues, right? Yeah.
I believe that all of this really does stem from, because look, I think we can talk about systems and we can talk about penchant for, corruption. We can talk about just having an innate desire to be lawless. The value that we place, and it's individuals make communities. It's not some kind of extraterrestrial force that comes into place it's individuals that make up communities. And then I think we really do need to go to the spirit of all of this and ask, what value do we place on life? The higher the value that we place on life and the protection of the same, I think then it becomes monumentally easier to then see things like this being implemented. And I don't think that we would have had as serious an issue, whether it's the police force today, whether it's whichever authority tomorrow, whomever it is. The value that we place on life, and I think those are the questions that need to be asked on a one-to-one, and say, really, what kind of value do you place? And that's why when Titi was giving the example of saying, here we are saying, we like it. That's what we do. We expect it to be that way. There are other jurisdictions whereby an election, for example, is carried out by volunteers. And what is expected is that you're going to do the right thing. Can you imagine that it is expected that you're going to do the right thing? In fact, the entire system depends on you doing the right thing, and you have that value that you've placed in it and said, you know what? I'm being depended upon to get this thing done right. So I'm going to do it because I have placed value in doing the right thing. And I think until and unless we then have a realization of what that value is, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, and it bleeds my heart, because a lot of work, a lot of man hours, a lot of research has been put into this to pinpoint the problem. But in order to change the situation, our value system comes into question, and to say, what value do we really place on things like this? Individualism over community? And unless we answer those questions, we can write reports for years to come and pray to whoever above that they will be implemented and things will change. But if we don't look at the value that we place on life and getting things done right, we may be writing reports for centuries.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What do you think would happen if, say, for instance, we have county bosses whom we elect? I think you know I'm going with this one. We were allowed to elect our police chiefs.
Just because of our campaign financing issues, I think we would get likely the worst of the worst.
Wash guy becomes IG of police.
Yeah.
That would be good. You know why? We then know exactly
Who we are dealing with.
You know from the get-go who we are dealing with. And more importantly, this person knows that they have to at least pander to the public because they owe the public their job.
Oh, that they'll do. It's just that now no wash person will be arrested in this country.
You know something? Already they're not being arrested, okay? As we speak.
Oh, we're talking about now.
Yeah, so I mean, have you heard of any being arrested?
Did they say they were wash people?
Yeah, I mean, this wash is phantom. Do they even exist? I mean, I keep hearing of it. I think they wash money, they clean money, they do all sorts of things. The point I'm getting at is here. There is no one approach to this problem because this problem is also multifaceted. A multi-pronged approach to it is what is needed. A 500-page report guarantees that thing will not be read, guarantees it will not be actioned. Now, unless you pick a piece that you think you want to look at, police, housing. Look at this terrible saga. Housing project began to you which decade? Okay? Left, right, circle in, circle out. Before you know it, 7 people own it. Now you're thinking, what? I'm simply saying it is clear to me that those who are in political leadership have no wish whatsoever to improve the lot of the police. They do not wish to. Because you improve the lot of the police, they'll become sober-minded, they'll actually seek to do what they are supposed to do. But so long as they are groveling, living in pigsties, a whole family is separated from another one with a dirty-looking curtain.
And that's okay.
It is supposed to be okay. And this is the person you want every day to go and pick up dead bodies, rotting bodies, do all sorts of things. This person is already mentally tortured and tormented before they even go out.
So if the political leadership will not improve the welfare of the police, what do?
We get rid of the political leadership. Not just get rid of them like we like saying, well, we vote in the new ones who will do the same thing. Getting rid of them doesn't mean you vote them out. It means you stamp your foot down and say, this we are not going to do. These are the steps we are going to take. We saw a sliver of it in 2002. Michuki leads and says, this is what we are going to do. The Matatu says, we are not. The public say, we are supporting, we'll walk. We'll walk. Walking, first of all, is healthy. Suddenly, there is change in an industry that you did not think there would be change.
Yeah.
And there was change. Getting a passport in this country was a nightmare. This thing you're thinking here, it was a nightmare before. Suddenly, a new government comes in, you walk into that place and you're being asked, how can we assist you?
It's a nightmare today.
It's a huge nightmare today. We've gone back.
Yeah. And basically the lesson is that once you let things start sliding, they ratchet up and it becomes unbearable. And then now we start basically talking about how it may be our fault.
Yeah,
you know,
gets out of control and we have nothing else to do. But once we get to internalize more of the report, please come back.
Yeah.
Let's keep discussing this. Let's keep educating the people on what the report has said. Let's discuss what's workable, what's viable, what's not.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.